Hi everyone, I'm Tim Kington and this is Coding is for the Birds. Daisy has, well, maybe she's decided not to join us today. I'm working through the Advent of Code problems from 2021 and this is day 5. Here's our problem for day 5. There's a link in the video description if you want to go take a look at it. We've come across a field of hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor and our puzzle input gives us lines of where those vents are located. So each line of input tells us where a line of vents appear. So we have vents in the grid coordinate 09259, 80 to 08, and so on. If we drew this in a grid, we would get something like this. Here we can see how many vents appear in each grid cell. So we get 2s in some places. That's because lines from the input overlapped. So our first job is to read the input and figure out how many points there are where at least 2 lines overlap. We also need to ignore lines that are not horizontal or vertical. So in this example input, there are some lines that are not, like 80 to 08. For now, we're just going to ignore those and not put them into our grid. If we take a look at my puzzle input, we can see that the size of the grid here is pretty large. If we just do this with a 2-dimensional array, it's going to be about 1,000 by 1,000. I don't think there are any 4-digit numbers in here, but that's 1,000,000 integers. So I'm not sure if we want to do this as an actual grid or if we just want to keep track of all the points. I guess we'll try it with just the grid because that's simplest, and we'll see how it goes. We could easily wind up in a situation where we don't have enough memory, or I'm not sure what part 2 is going to look like. For now, we'll just say the grid is 1,000 by 1,000. Get our line, and our line will look like this. So let's put it in here just to make it easier to remember. We can create some tokens by splitting this on spaces. And then we need to parse the first and last token into XY coordinates. So I guess we'll just do that. XY toke is tokens.split, token sub 0, where there's a colon or a comma. And then we can say x1 is token sub 0 and y1 that, and then we can do this again for token 2, and then this will be x2 and y2. Whoops. All right. So can we count on these always being in increasing order? No. Here's a y that decreases. So we're going to have to handle that as well. All right, so first we're going to ignore lines that are not horizontal or vertical. So if x1 is not equal to x2 and y1 is not equal to y2, then we'll just continue. We'll skip this line for the moment. Now we need to be able to loop from one end of our line to the other. I don't really want to write a bunch of logic to figure out which way to count. So I think what I can do is take the sign of the difference. So let's say that dx is equal to signum? I think it's signum. Yeah, signum of x2 minus x1. And this is a double, so we have to cast it back to an int. And dy will be the same thing basically, math.signum 2 minus y1. This will be -1, 0, or 1, depending on that difference. And this will let us loop between the two values. So let's do that. So we'll say int x equals x1, int y equals y1. And then while x is not equal to x2, and y is not equal to y2, no, or. While we're not at our end point, we need to increment our grid. So grid sub x sub y plus plus, and then we will move. So x plus equals dx, and y plus equals dy. That should give us our grid, I think. So maybe here we can print out our grid and see what it looks like. So we're probably not going to want to do that for my giant input. Let's do it for the example. Let's also reduce the size of this for the moment. And see what happens. Okay, so that was not very helpful. Let's look at it in the debugger instead, I guess. I wish the array types in Java had some kind of useful toString method. Okay, so we're getting 2, 2 in the bottom row, and then 1, and then in the third column, lines 2 and 4 start having data. This doesn't look quite right to me. So something is not right here. Let's stop each time we hit this point and see what we've got. So let's go ahead and run after the first line has been put in. The first line was 09 to 59. So that should be the first 6 locations here. All right, so let's see what we got. So we should have a 1 there. We should have a 1 in the last spot in each of these arrays. And we went up to 5, so 5 should have 1 also. And 5 does not. That's our problem, right? We didn't get the last bit of the line. I guess we'll put an extra grid plus plus here maybe, and see the grid at that point. All right, so here we've got a 2, which we want. Okay, now we have a 1 and a 2, which is better. 1 in row 4, and then here we have 1s in 1, 2, and 4, and a 2 and 9. So this is looking like it's right. 1 and 4, 1's in those rows. Okay, that's more like it. And now we'll go through and count the number of cells that have more than 1. So for x is less than grid length. This, and our count is 5 in this example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks right. Let's try real input. Oh yes, I need to make my array larger again. $58.35. All right. So was there anything really interesting here? Parsing the input is just kind of annoying. The one thing that is interesting is using dx and dy here. So one approach we could have taken here is to figure out which value is changing, x or y, and then get the minimum and maximum value for that coordinate and try to write a loop that would iterate over x or y and fill in our grid cells. Doing it with dy and dx is a little nicer because we don't care which one's changing. We take this difference, we call signum, which returns -1, 0, or 1. And so if only one of these is changing, then dx or dy is 0 and the other one is plus or minus 1. And we can go through and fill in our grid. So this is a lot nicer than the other approach. The other approach has a bunch of if statements and min and max, and you probably wind up with a bunch of ugly logic. This way is pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at part 2. All right, as expected, we now need to consider diagonal lines. The lines will only be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal at 45 degrees, so that's good news. If the angle could be different from 45, then x and y would change at different rates, and we'd have to deal with fractions or something. It would be pretty annoying. This way won't be so bad. In fact, I think we don't even have to change our code to get this to work. All we have to do is stop ignoring diagonal lines. All right, 17013. Yeah. And here we learn that I forgot to record the first time I entered that. So that was the correct answer. Well, there's a solution for day 5. Daisy felt that this problem was beneath her skills, but maybe she'll help us out next time. This one did go pretty fast, mostly because of the way I approached the first part. Knowing that diagonal lines were coming did help quite a bit there. I'll see you next time for day 6. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.